He realized he had some missing memories, but he didn't mind. Twilight has that side to it. He has tried his hand at all sorts of experiments, but has also used himself as a test subject countless times. As a result, he has lost his memory on several occasions. I thought that this would be one of those times. And he is optimistic that all his problems will be solved if he can just take away Luminous powers. Therefore, there is only one correct answer. Shall we finish this? That's ridiculous. Let's get revenge. As long as Twilight's barrier was still in place, she could not expect any help. Nevertheless, Luminous proudly entered into her final battle. Fleeting Rose Blade Rosa Espada. This technique is Rumina's secret weapon. A one-time trump card that can only be activated if the Night Rose sword is sacrificed. Luminous swung her sword, and the flash of it cut through Twilight's barrier, and at the same time, the blade broke into pieces. The ultimate mythical god sword unleashed all of its hidden energy. My, it was impressive that you managed to break my barrier, but your prized sword has now been shattered. Twilight sneered, but Rumina's expression did not look dead. The fragments of the Night Rose sword transformed into scattered rose petals. Each and every one of them embodied the concept of death through Rumina's authority. They were the flower of nightmares that lured those who touched them to death. Furthermore, it is strengthened by the ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Asmodeus, the king of lust that governs life and death, and all of the stolen life force. Energy is returned to Luminous. It was an ultimate secret technique that could only be used once, as it had a healing effect while attacking. Twilight walks fearlessly through the rose blizzard. Is it a magic trick? It's a silly child's game. It would have worked if it wasn't for me, but alas. Twilight scoffed. He approached Rumina's calmly, knowing that there was no need to get serious, and spat out blood. Teeth. Twilight knelt down, with a look of shock on her face. You're calling it child's play, aren't you? I've strengthened my strongest technique. With the ultimate authority, it should be somewhat effective. The concept of death has properties that are similar to nothingness. It absorbs the life force of those it touches, turning it into poison that eats away at the body. Although Twilight had seen through Rumina's sword strokes, she had ignored the petals. This had backfired, leading to the humiliating outcome we see today. Even so, Luminous knew that she still wouldn't be able to kill him. The upper limit of energy that can be absorbed is the maximum value of Luminous, and when facing Twilight, it is less than 10% of that. Still, if they could get revenge, it would be a great victory. Luminous smiled with satisfaction. However, one question remained. Chloe's help is still missing, and if things continue as they are, Twilight will achieve her goal. Even if we rewind from there, Luminous should be safe by then. Is there still something I can do? I had never experienced time rewinding before, so I was worried about not knowing what would happen next. It may be impossible to defeat Twilight, but they should still try to fight to the end. Luminous thought this, and looked at Twilight, who was still crouching. Twilight slowly stood up. He erased his smile and stared at Luminous with a cold expression. My goodness, you are right. It seems I have been enjoying being in the mortal world for the first time in a long time. I must quickly accomplish my goal and welcome Veldanava-sama. Hearing this verdict, Luminous was shaken. Veldanava, then. If those words are true, then the story changes in many ways. Defeating the Destruction Death World Dragon Ryu, Ivarage isn't the end of it, as there are still a mountain of problems to be solved afterwards. To begin with, there are many people who admire Veldanava. Twilight was one of them, but he was not the only one. He had many other followers. Naturally, there were some among those gathered here, and if that happened, it looked like the current forces would be split in two. It was no wonder that Luminous was panicking. thinking that this was a major problem. Ruminous herself had no emotional attachment to Veldanava. She thought he was a great being, but she had absolutely no feelings of loyalty or wanting to protect him with her life. When I heard that he had been killed by people from a certain kingdom, all I could think was, is that so? Even though he was an immortal dragon species, he didn't revive, which was something he only thought that could happen. Guy seemed to consider him a close friend, and Ramaris seemed to owe him a debt of gratitude. To be honest, there was a good chance that these two would become enemies. He will become a father to Milim, but it is unclear whether she has any feelings for him. He is usually so carefree that it seems as though there is no affection between father and daughter. Dagrul, for example, had once fought and been defeated, so he seemed to harbor feelings of loyalty in his heart. If Veldanava were to be revived, he would undoubtedly become an enemy. But since he was currently sealed away by Veldora's abundant mystic waves, fertile paradox, there was no problem in excluding him this time. There were rumors that Dino was a former subordinate, but they were already enemies, so it was too late now. Judging from the behavior of Benimaru and the others who had come to reinforce, there seemed to be no need to be cautious. And then there was Leon and Rimuru. Leon is a young demon king, and doesn't seem to have much interest in anything other than Chloe. This time, Chloe is on Luminous' side, so it looks like she'll become a friend. For Rimuru, this is the most important thing. The moment Rimuru turns against us, our defeat will be confirmed. But he is the kind of guy who is prepared to turn anyone, whether it be humanity or the demon lord, against him in order to obtain his ideal life. Even if Veldanava tries to destroy the world, he will definitely resist to the end. That was the conclusion that Ruminas came to. With Rimuru here, we can fight to the end. Winning or losing is secondary. He believes he will be able to leave behind proof that he lived, Guy, Ramaris, and Milim. The movements of these three people require careful attention, but that worry can be put off for later. The priority here is to prepare myself and do something about Twilight in front of me. Ruminas had deliberated in her accelerated thought state and made that decision. Ruminas regained her composure. Seeing this, Twilight shrugged her shoulders. I was honestly hoping to add you to the group, but unfortunately, Twilight had mentioned Veldanava's name, thinking that if she gave him some special information, he would obey. However, Rumina's reaction was not good. And it ended with her only making him prepare himself. At this point, there's no reason to keep him alive. Twilight made that decision and poured her power into the Origin blood spear. Well then, bye-bye. I'll raise my next daughter to be a more obedient child, Twilight said with a smile. And in the next moment, it moved with such speed that it was hard to believe what had happened up until then. In an instant, the spear pierced Rumina's chest and pierced her heart. Ruminas realized that he was clearly going easy on her. Twilight really liked Luminous, which is why she tried to make her her friend until the very end. However, Ruminas has no regrets. At worst, he was prepared to even accept death. However, the truth is that she was hoping for Chloe's help, but there was still no sign of that happening, and Rumina's heart was pierced by the Origin blood spear, and she collapsed to the ground. In the end, no help came. It wasn't that she wasn't sad about it, but Rumina's thought, it can't be helped. Chloe, for her part, is busy being on guard against Ivalage. If we look at it from the perspective of the world's crisis, that is probably more important. If that's the case, then this result would also be no, it was wrong. Oh, so that's how it is. Ruminas understood. It was. I remembered everything. It's not that Chloe couldn't come to help. There was no need for him to come. If he had seen this outcome, it was only natural that he would believe in Ruminous. Because that's right. Luminous is the one. Ime. At the same time that Ruminous was pierced by the origin blood, Testarossa and the others arrived on the battlefield, accompanied by the multinational army. My, this is also amazing. Testarossa muttered with a smile. The battle between Milim and Ivalage is taking place inside the Tentsukaku, so it is not visible to others. However, their presence can be sensed, and only they, strongest, can tell that it is a battle of an enormous scale. We'll defend this place to the death. As soon as Karian declared this, he threw himself into the battle against the cryptids that were pouring out from the east. Following him were the former members of the Beast King warriors, 100 people led by Sphere. Among the Flying Fire Beast 10 Riders Kai warriors Shi Brigade Dan. Around 1,000 strong warriors, and those who were relatively lightly fatigued were also taking part in the battle. The others were trying to recover in the former Eurysania, but they were setting out with the hopes of their comrades. Well then, let's call it a patrol of the skis, Frey declared, accompanied only by the heaven, fly shoo shoo. Frey's prized possession was the griffin, a flying demonic beast, but it was unable to fly due to being frozen. It was still capable of fighting, but Frey had decided that if it continued like this, it would die a dog's death. In this final battle, only the best were needed. Protecting a hindrance would only waste precious recovery resources. The warriors of Milim's royal guard were also full of spirit, but those who lacked the necessary strength were left behind. Instead, the people here were fully prepared. Frey took off with these fierce warriors. So, which direction should we head? Midray's question. Basically, the warrior monk priest group is primarily used for healing. Although he is also skilled in hand-to-hand combat, he is also a valuable user of healing magic, so it was safer for him to stay in the rear. The point is that division of roles is important. They are highly valued on the battlefield, as healers who are also skilled in basic self-defense. The one who answered this question was Hinata. Currently, something seems to have happened to Rumina-sama. She is in a state where not only can she be revived, but even healing magic cannot reach her, so it's a great help that you have joined the battle. Yes. Here, to the east, we have the Holy Knights and the Crusaders, so we should be able to manage somehow. In response to Hinata's statement, Benimaru continued. As far as I know, the most dangerous area is the west. There are many people with the ability, self-regeneration in the north, and it seems that there are recovery magicians under the command of Demon Lord Leon in the south. If possible, I would like to have spare medical units in all directions, but we can't afford to be extravagant. First, as an emergency, I would like to ask for the western direction. Hinata concluded. Understood, then we will head west. With that said, Midray quickly took action. The Kurenai, who remained in the former Eurysania, also joined together with Gabua and came under Benimaru's command. For some reason, Phobio was also there, but Benimaru refrained from interjecting. It would be a problem if they were getting lovey-dovey, but Gabua and Phobio were not a bad match. He decided that if they continued to be a pair, their fighting abilities would improve. Gerudo has also carefully selected 2,000 of the top members of the Yellow Corps and Yellow numbers, and they have arrived. From Benimaru's perspective, he is extremely reliable. Gerudo, I know you're being reckless, but I'm counting on you to see it through to the end, of course. Now that Rimuru-sama has returned, there is no anxiety in my heart. Gerudo responded to Benimaru with a heavy breathing and full of energy. Even when faced with a terrifying army of evil gods, he shows no sign of being intimidated. Seeing this, Benimaru grinned. That's right. I can't fight in a shameful manner in front of Rimuru-sama. Well then I'll be going. Gerudo walked steadily. Benimaru also couldn't let himself be defeated, so he raised his voice and encouraged his warriors. While Benimaru and the others were there, Gensho and the others were having a meeting. I guess I'll just continue supporting Benimaru Dono. Testarossa was quick to spot what was expected to be the most difficult spot. While understanding this, Carrera acquiesced. He thought he could finish his part before the final big game and then join up with the others. I'm going to do some light exercise. I'm feeling a bit sluggish after being frozen. With that said, Carrera quickly headed north. Ultima was in the south, and Veldora was heading west. Testarossa was left behind in the east, so Carrera was probably careful to avoid overlapping prey. His determination and drive were truly impressive. All that's left are misery and rain. I'm worried about Luminous-sama, but what worries me more is the abandoned spell. It can't be helped. I'll act as a temporary solution in your place. Mizari immediately grasped the situation and knew what she had to do. As he had just said, that was to become Rumina's representative. Specifically, they were to become the vessels for the miracle of God that had been spread across the entire battlefield. This was the secret of faith and grace. A ritual magic that used the brains of those who believed in the God Luminous as computing devices. It was an ultimate secret technique that performed calculations with overwhelming performance, allowing extremely difficult magic spells to be used in succession. The problem is that this is a special technique tailored to Luminous. If the agent takes this lightly, the consequences will be severe. Before that, it would have been impossible to even exercise it. However, if it's misery, the primordial green veil. Mizari was also good at impersonating God. Imitation, a little more how to say it. With a slightly troubled look on her face, Mizari complained, but Rain didn't seem to care. Then I will go and support Rumina's-sama, who I have arbitrarily called my friend. Leaving that statement behind, Rain took action without waiting for a reply. Misery, who was left alone there, saw Rain off with a worried look on her face. Asking, I wonder if she's okay. Seeing Luminous stop, Twilight let out a big sigh. Oh dear, I can't believe that my masterpiece would end up being destroyed by my own hands. Twilight muttered, but then she suddenly felt a chill and her gaze sharpened. Ruminous doesn't move. However, his body was floating in the air. The blood spear of the divine ancestor, origin blood, transformed into rose petals and was absorbed into Rumina's chest, emitting a faint glow. My spear, why? Why did it end up in Rumina's? As Twilight was shocked by the unexpected turn of events, Rumina's eyes opened. In front of her. Her face is very beautiful. Twilight felt something was of, but soon realized the reason. Rumina's height had grown a little. Her cherry-colored lips slightly parted, revealing her pure white canines, and a beautiful voice announced the cruel reality. The experiment was a success. I remembered everything. Rumina's raised her head and said this. The color of her eyes remains asymmetrical. However, there is a slight change. Within the crimson corneas, blue pupils stood out, while conversely within the blue sun-green heki, corneas, red pupils stood out. It was almost the same as before, but it felt more chaotic. The change isn't limited to eye color. His presence was like that of a different person from before. The spirit and aura they emit is different. Rumina's presence had clearly increased. You are. Even you can't understand. Rumina's asked arrogantly to Twilight, who was unable to hide her shock at losing the blood spear of the divine ancestor, origin blood. Twilight didn't even understand the question. What are you talking about? That's fine. I'll teach you so that even someone as ignorant as you can understand. Luminous said this as if she felt pity for Twilight. Then he continues, beginning his lecture. What is the most important element in forming a person's personality? That is soul. To be more precise, it is the core heart and memories. Yes, Luminous nodded. From the outside, they looked like master and disciple, but before they knew it, the roles had been reversed. When a person dies, their soul disperses and then disappears. They either go through a cycle of reincarnation, are tortured by demons in the underworld, or attain nirvana. In other words, some may ascend. What this all has in common is that when the soul can no longer maintain its shape, it is death, and it reaches nothingness. That's why. So I thought about the definition of death and eternal life. We're a long-lived species, you know. Besides, we have an almost infinite lifespan, so there's no need to worry about eternal life. Luminous gave an exasperated look at Twilight, who looked annoyed. Then he asks the following question. Your statement just now convinced me, but you still don't remember. Huh. No, that's fine. Let's get back to the topic. Luminous is no longer afraid of Twilight. This feeling was also conveyed to Twilight, who joined in the conversation with Luminous, feeling confused. If she had used force, she should have been able to defeat him in an instant. However, there was something creepy about Luminous right now, and Twilight's instincts were telling her that she should listen to what he had to say. Luminous spoke. What does immortality mean? Does it mean that your current personality will continue to be maintained? That's right, even if the soul is inherited in the same state, if the memories are lost and one is influenced by different thoughts, I don't think it can be considered as a completely identical existence. If you're a long-lived species, surely many of you forget your past. Memory loss can happen to anyone, and it's possible that you might remember something by reading a document or something. Though it's a rare case, there have been confirmed cases where reincarnated people with the same soul remember their past lives. If there's a reasonable degree of agreement, then it's probably fine to ignore it. That is certainly a matter of degree. In the extreme, even if you have no memories. That's true. Until now, I also thought that even if memories are lost, if the soul is inherited in the same state, then it should be recognized as the same individual. However, I was wrong. Try imagining a true dragon. Although they are immortal, their mechanism is not omnipotent, is it? Luminous points out that this is a denial of immortality. That's right. Luminous came to this question after observing Veldora being destroyed again and again. Dragons are immortal, but their personalities are reset every time they are reborn. There are also gaps in their memories, but perhaps this is the result of some kind of malfunction occurring during reincarnation. In any case, it's clear that there are some problems with the reincarnation of dragon species. The important thing is to completely protect the soul. I agree with that, but what's the right thing to do? The conclusion Twilight reached was to have her become a Manas, an information life form, digital nature, and reside within an immortal being known as a true dragon. However, since it relies on other powers, it's hard to say it's perfect. That's why he had prepared numerous backups, but it couldn't be denied that even those were inferior in performance compared to Pseudo-Gi Dragon Body Tie. Luminous answered. If it's the parallel existence that Velgrind is good at, then by perfectly synchronizing all of the main bodies, separate body, soul, body, it could be said that they are eternal and immortal beings. Luminous was of the opinion that this was the best possible solution. It is precisely because it is possible to interfere with information particles that memories and personalities can be perfectly synchronized, transcending time and space. If the vessel called soul is divided into the smallest possible units, then that many separate bodies can be prepared. Which are the main bodies? Themselves. This method, separate body-soul-body tie, does not allow the maximum and highest performance of the integrated main body to be drawn out. But it is invincible in terms of safety. In fact, it could be said that there is no need to worry about it being destroyed. Therefore, Luminous asserts, if you don't prepare in advance, there is no other way to achieve perfect regeneration. This means that you, Twilight, are also incomplete. Hearing this, Twilight clicked her tongue in displeasure. What an insolent guy. He spat out those words and glared at Luminous with disgust. So in the end, you were just trying to deceive me with your bluff. I was watching to see if you would try anything underhanded, but I never thought you'd rely solely on your words. It'll be sad to think that this is my greatest work, Twilight mocked Luminous. Yet, Luminous doesn't seem to care. You are the one to be pitied. Luminous said this, beckoning Twilight to join her. I will teach you the brutal truth, not with words but with my fists. Then even a fool like you will understand. That boast only irritated Twilight even more. Thanks to the experience she has cultivated over the years, even when she gets angry, her emotions remain undisturbed, and she keeps her emotions separate from her reason. This is Twilight's strength and the secret to her power.